Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program, Capital Beat. Arrest of the Newsclick editor-in-chief, Prabir Purkaistha, and the portal's HR head, Amit Chakravarti, on charges of terrorism has actually pushed Modi government's attack on independent journalism to a totally new plane. Now, raiding an entire media organization, confiscating and snatching away the devices, the electronic devices from the journalists without the due process is certainly a bad omen for the free press. But is this incident the worst signal for the continuation of democracy? Joining me now is veteran journalist, author, and economist Prem Shankar Jha. It's a pleasure to have you on the program. And my first question to you is that why I raise this question, there are fears in my mind as to what's really going to be the future of journalism in India if this is going to be the state of affairs, and especially for people like us, for people like so many of us who are working as independent journalists, who are running news portals with a balanced view, questioning the government where they should be. What is the future ahead, sir?
Dark, I fear, very dark, because what Mr. Modi is actually showing is two things. First, that he will stop at nothing to win the next election. Second, that he respects nothing. And least of all, does he respect the press. But it also shows something which we should be proud of and which we should promote and hold our sort of dhira, and be ready to combat him on, which is that it is showing that the alternative media is really having an effect. If you look at some of the readerships, they go from 3 million, the viewerships, 3 million to 7 million. Now, that's viewership, so that doesn't mean number of people viewing. The number of people could be anything from 1 to 15 or 20. So we're talking about average, let's say, about 20 million people. When you talk about 7 million viewership, as Ravish Kumar has. I think that the attempt to suppress free thinking and suppress the voice of the people is failing. And Modi is terrified by this because he knows deep down that the voice of the people is going against him. This is where I think that he's actually cutting his own throat, if you ask me. But that's for him to do.
Absolutely.
It's the worst thing he could have done.
But Mr. Jha, you were there when the emergency was evoked in the yesteryears in the 70s, and people say that time it was equally bad. But when you compare the present circumstances with the emergency of the 1970s, what is the difference you really find in the two eras?
The arrests and the emergency was a bad law. It was a tyrannical law. As it turned out, it did not destroy Indian democracy. In fact, Mr. Indira Gandhi had no intention of doing that. But it could easily have become that. Because once you start going down that road of postponement of elections, you can be persuaded very easily to postpone again and again. And then after that, people just give up hope and the whole system turns and starts working against democracy itself. That did not happen at that time. But other than that, there are very significant differences. One is the extreme care with which as far as journalists particularly are concerned, I'm going to confine myself to that, with which the shall we say, the administrators of terror, were the extreme care with which they selected whom to arrest or whom to question. Forget arrest, but even questioning. First of all, they waited and collected all the proof they could before they went. Secondly, it was always individual journalists. They did not go after particular newspapers. There may have been one or two smaller newspapers that they might have closed. I do not have an idea of what happened in every state. It's a long time ago. But to my certain knowledge, being in Bombay, not a single paper was closed there or in Pune. Now, within the journalist fraternity, they first looked for concrete proof, and of only one thing: are you writing abroad? Yes, if you wrote anti-government things in the government, you had a press censorship bureau that cut it out. But they did not put the journalist in jail for writing an anti-government piece. I wrote at least two anti-government pieces that I remember quite well, but they were on the fact that the economic claims of Mrs. Gandhi's government, because it also coincided with her 10 years of prime ministership, that these were fake, and that was all. They did not go after me, so it was only political. It was, if you broke a concrete law, and one of the laws was you were not allowed to write articles for foreign papers. And several of the people, including a close friend of mine on the Times of India, K.R. Sundararajan, who was wrote as many as 300 articles in foreign papers, including the New Statesman and newspaper in the US. He was finally caught because one of the papers wrote to ask him whether the money for the article should be sent to his son who was studying in the university in the US. And in spite of that, they were very careful. They did extensive discussions with him. They came to his house. They interrogated him in his house. I used to call him every evening after the interrogation to ask him how he was. And he said they were perfectly pleasant. But they came to his house. Eventually, they took him away to jail.
Right.
Now, this is very different. Every attempt was made to not attack the person of the journalist while enforcing a law which we disagreed with, but which Mrs. Gandhi felt was necessary to enforce, at least temporarily.
Right. But Mr. Jha, talking particularly about the Newsclick case, now they have slapped charges under UAPA, and then they've said that they are receiving the Chinese fund to propagate a lot of negative stories against India. Now, how do you find these charges? Do they look substantiated, or they look like something in the thin air, and whereas the ultimate motive is to send out a strong message to the independent journalists, to the news portals who are doing their jobs in the manner in which they should be doing? What is the message of the government, really?
The last is their intention, and the message is terror. Nothing more, terror. This is exactly the way that German fascism started, and very quickly brought German newspapers under their control. This is the way that Erdogan fought and put at 1,300 people, I think, in jail. Most of them journalists, and some of the top journalists, in order to subdue the Turkish press. Now, that terror is being used. It's being used ham-handedly. Look, if there's a multi-billionaire in America who is part funding Newsclick, and he happens to be partly or wholly of Indian origin, all right, he's doing that. You can certainly go after him. You can cut off the funds.
Right.
Why do you pick up the journalists? Where have you proved? How does accepting money from someone who, by the way, if he had been accepting money from the Chinese, you think that the US wouldn't have gone after him already? So if he is fine in the US, which is actually much harder on this connection with clandestine connection with China than we are today. As you know, we are trading happily with the Chinese. PM Modi wants to have innumerable meetings with Xi Jinping, etc., etc. But then, if you want to be harsh on somebody, you prove that the Chinese money came to Newsclick directly. You cannot even prove that it's coming to this Edward Roy, whatever his name is.
Right.
And the American government has not been able to prove it. And American government is even tougher on this.
Right. And
surprisingly, had bad experiences.
And surprisingly, they are also quoting the New York Times report of last month, which spoke about this philanthropist Neville Roy Singham. That he was a man who was funneling all the money into Newsclick. And that's the report exactly which every cabinet minister in the Modi government is also quoting. That look, that international newspaper reported like this.
So that international newspaper reported like that, quite right. But was he reporting a crime according to the US government? No.
Right.
It is you who are making it a crime. Now, what crime is it? Acceptance of, is it, you could say FCRA, foreign donations, whatever it's called, Foreign
Commission Regulation Act, yeah.
You could say that they have taken money clandestinely from a foreign source, which is a proscribed foreign source. But in that case, that's where it stops. But to say, they've not said that, that's not it. What they're saying is that China is doing this,
right,
via an intermediary in England, in America, who the Americans have not gone after. What it really boils down to is this has been cooked up by some person with a very second-class brain, because he suddenly remembered that civil allegations had been made against Trump and in his sort of financial dealings with Ukraine. So, these are copycat people with second-class brains, large numbers of them, with very limited knowledge of international affairs, are just hunting around desperately for something that they can use to show as a precedent for something they want to do anyway. The truth is, Mr. Modi is very afraid that he's losing the next election. Mr. Modi is not capable of losing anything. He will not lose.
In a situation like this, Mr. Jha, what can the journalists do except for raising voices like they did yesterday at the press club? And lots of journalists turned up and in support of people like Prabir Purkaistha, Paranjay Kuha Thakurda, Urmilesh, all these people who were hauled up at the police station and they were questioned and interrogated. What can the journalists do except for just raising the voice at this point of time? Because nobody knows, there'll be suddenly, all of a sudden in the morning, there'll be a knock at the door and the journalists will be taken away.
Neelu, what the journalists can do is, first of all, shame their colleagues in the Modi media. And that is being done, I'm very glad to say. And I hope that those who remain unashamed pay a price in journalism and from the public when the government changes. But the issues other than that, what journalists cannot do more than they are already doing. Just keep telling the truth to power. Do it without offending individuals. It's not necessary. I don't think we should take individual people's names. I think the Prime Minister's name is slightly different because he both stands for the government and for himself. It's right. It's a broader name. But I wouldn't go after a particular minister or a particular secretary in government. Just talk with the government. Say exactly what they're doing and what one is opposed to, and then say, I have done my duty. If you want to do something to me, I'm there as what's his name? Abhisar.
Abhisar. Yes.
Abhisar. I'm very at my age. I'm very very poor on names. Short memory on names. The names are the first that go actually. And Abhisar was wonderful in his program yesterday. I think that's the kind of fight back that we all must make.
Right. But Mr. Jha, another disturbing trend is the depolarization in media, which of course was not there during the emergency era. And now since today's media is so polarized and we bracket it as a Godi media, then we have another alternate media which keeps questioning the government. Now, yesterday also at the press club, while these journalists were raising voices against the police, against the Modi government as to what is happening in the journalists, there were 3, 4 journalists who were sent from the government side to, raise a placard that, these traitors should be sent away to China. And, those kind of placards were raised at that point of time as well. So in this highly polarized environment, do you think that this threat will be treated as a collective threat on media? Because obviously there will be deep divisions with it.
Well, I mean, just because you wield the camera doesn't make you a part of the media.
Right.
There are, shall we say, fellow travelers in journalism, as there have been in politics, and we have a large number of them floating around, including someone I believe who is one of those who came and was exceedingly nice to me yesterday at the press club meeting. The thing is that we are actually dignifying them by calling them journalists. Let's just call them fellow travelers. Let's be blunt about it. Let's not even talk about the Godi media. They're not even media. They're propagandists. They're fellow traveler propagandists. That's what I have not seen since NDTV was taken over by Adani. I have not even opened Tata Play.
Right.
Except to watch the cricket matches and to watch the US Opens.
Right. But Mr. Jha, do you think...
That I think is the important thing. Boycott. Right. And they will see it in their ratings. Also, the ratings will not suffer to the extent that the people are changing for one reason. The television owning class in India, by and large, is a lower middle to middle aspiring upper class. This is also precisely the class from which Mr. Modi draws his maximum support. Now, that being the case, you will not see the change in the Modi media's influence by looking at the TRP rating of these channels. You really need to look at the number of people who are seeing the alternative channels on YouTube and add them up. Mind you, YouTube, they've suddenly understood that YouTube is very important, and there's shall we say, the Godi media have now got Godi YouTubes too. And so I now have this problem of having to, when I open YouTube, to sift through huge numbers of people in which people in alarmist tones are talking about what is being done to India by these fellows, and then I find the people I want to look at. But others can do that too.
Right. But coming back to what the intentions of the Modi government are, and as you said, that these he really wants to stay in power by hook or by crook. But given the fact that in the last so many days, number of things happening with India alliance, strengthening its position. Then there was a caste census narrative now, which is being projected by the opposition leaders. Do you think that Modi has realized that if we do not control media, then his end would be his tenure could end anytime soon?
I think that your last statement, does he realize that we do not control the media, his tenure could end soon? I think that we all of us are taking ourselves too seriously. We are not the only influencers on the basis of which people are going to make their decisions. The most important the most important influences, has Modi fulfilled any of his concrete promises to the public? In 2014, 44% of the youth, I believe under the age of 32, in that particular survey, voted for Modi, when the overall vote was 31%. That means take that lot out, and you find that the non-youth vote was about the same 20 to 25% that it has been for a long time. Modi made promises, and he talked about vibrant Gujarat, and that had been written up, and we had not really examined Gujarat's vibrancy in detail, because it was a tiny state in one corner of the country, and we therefore, we mean the national media, we're not terribly worried about that. So vibrant Gujarat went over, and he made these promises, 20 million jobs, this, that, and the other, and some of them he delivered. Don't forget. They would have been delivered in any case, but he was man there. One was the opening of bank accounts. The second was the generalization from particular cash transfers to all benefits being that you're entitled to. Pension, health, accident, whatever else it may be, a provident fund and so on, going into your bank account automatically. That made I think that, particularly in the first 5 years, it gave a certain amount of confidence. But that's evaporated now, because the economy, and underlying that, okay, you're giving greater entitlements to people, but entitlements to what? If there are not jobs, what do the children do? I can tell you what they do in Punjab. They go to drugs. As far back as 10 years ago, a former DDJ of Punjab, who just retired from the police, told us at the Kushwant Literary Festival that 72% of the youth of Punjab have either experimented with or are on drugs, because they no longer want to till the fields. They got tractors, they've been educated, they want educated jobs. The educated jobs are not, there are not many of them around. So in despair, they are moving to things like drugs and so on. I think the Khalistan menace that is quite real. It's small but genuine, is also connected to drugs. So these are the real problems that we are facing.
But when it comes to Modi's treatment of press, what I don't understand and would like to understand from you is that he has an unwavering support for the freedom of press. At least that's what he claims on camera when he says, oh, India is a mother of democracy and we vouch for the freedom of press. But now looking at incidents like these, what has happened to Newsclick and several other journalists in the past, but this particular incident where an entire media organization is charged with terror and journalists are being taken away, it has a chilling effect. But can I ask you that this Modi has this repression and persecution, has it almost reached a McCarthyian dimension now as far as Modi government is concerned?
Forget about that, McCarthy. What it has reached is the dimension of panic. Modi's panic. He came with promises, as I said in the first period. He delivered a few. He was lucky in the sense that there was an attack on Pulwama, etc., which he played into his sort of hyper nationalist image, without his having to do anything bad to his own people. Now, in the second year, none of this is there. They're just now working for him. So what does he do? He is now going out to stop questions being asked about the government and stop media from showing that he's achieved nothing. The labor force participation ratio, which measures the number of people who have jobs or are looking for jobs, has been declining steadily since 2009, and the decline has continued and sharpened in the last 5 years. Which means while the working force itself has been growing, so that the number of people who have given up looking for jobs is multiplying at a terrific rate. Now these are people whom you can't fool. by withholding information from them, because they'll vote on their experience. The question is who to vote for. Until now, there was no alternative. Now there is an alternative that has come into being. It's not articulating itself very well yet, but it will, I hope, do so in the future. But even if it doesn't, there is an alternative that everyone now recognizes.
No, but
that is what, allow me. That is what Modi is afraid of, and it has pushed him over the edge.
Right. But do you think that he's desperate now, looking at the alternative which is there, and people are questioning him that he hasn't achieved so much, what he promised? So do you think that he's really in a desperate mode, and that is why this unbridled authoritarianism, which is being exhibited through repression of the media?
Desperate is probably the wrong word to use.
Okay.
What he understands is that the BJP came to power because of the way the simple majority voting system works, which is to magnify the vote to the share seats to vote ratio of the largest party and to diminish that of smaller parties. Now, as between 2014 and 2019, in both elections, they were the largest single party. So this went in their favor. 31% of the vote got them 52% of the seats. And in the second thing, 37% got them almost 62% of the seats. Now, what he sees is that this advantage of being the largest single party is being taken away from him. And if he wants to retain it, he has not merely to hold on to the 37% that he got in 2019, which is already a difficult enough task for any incumbent government, which has not a great deal of concrete performance going for it. But apart from that, that is one part of it. But the other side, if it gets together and say he goes down to 35%, and the other side gets 36%, he will be the way the simple majority voting system works, he could go down to 150 seats.
Absolutely. But
that is what scares him.
Right. No, of course. I mean, from what you're saying and what we are seeing, that he wants to latch on to power anyhow. But why do you think Modi is not worried about indices like the Press Freedom Index, where India is almost like 160 out of 180? And there has been so much of criticism on this front. But these things don't seem to be moving Modi at all. I mean, for him, it doesn't matter. No matter how many countries.
Perfectly good reason, Neelu. You forget that he was Chief Minister of Gujarat for 12 years. You forget that nothing happened to him. He got away with every single thing. 2,000 Muslims got massacred, or Hindus and Muslims, close to 2,000, a few Hindus, but mostly Muslims got massacred. Courts went in his favor. Those who got put in jails have all been released by another court through another thing. There's not a single person who was involved in the Ahmedabad and Gujarat massacres of 2002 who has been even punished. There's no one in jail today. There's no one even in jail today. Now, here's a man who got away with everything, who has tasted absolute power in Gujarat. Judges were so terrified in Gujarat that on 2 occasions, when the CBI tried to send a special court to study, to try people in the government police, including Mr. Amit Shah as a minister, for faked encounter killings. On both those occasions, the judges recused themselves. They couldn't find a judge in Gujarat who would sit on that court. So they had to bring that case to Maharashtra.
Right.
There they said, knowing this, no recusal will be allowed. We are appointing a particular judge. Bombay High Court has selected him, Mr. J.T. Utpat. He will have to listen from beginning to end. Beginning to end, he couldn't listen because date after date, Mr. Amit Shah never turned up. So eventually, after 15 months, when he finally gave what do you call it, a ultimatum to Amit Shah, I don't know what happened the next 10 days, but Mr. Utpat suddenly said, I want to recuse, in spite of his earlier promise and the commitment. And he says, why? When people asked him, he said, my daughter is going to study in Pune and I must go and be with her. I mean, is that a good reason for recusing yourself from the most important trial in the country? And tragically, his successor, Mr. Ghanshyam Loya, just happened to have a heart attack.
Right. No, but coming back, of course,
that is the exercise of absolute power in one way or the other.
No, but sir, each time
on that.
Right. But Mr. Jha, each time an assault on media happens, and especially incidents like these, they have a dispiriting effect. The entire community is feels a little bogged down. But do you think that the worst is yet to come? Or this is one of the worst incidents we have seen so far, where so many journalists, where the entire media organization is raided, the editor-in-chief is put behind bars on terror charges. I mean, do you think that in the last 9 years, what we have seen, this is one of the worst episodes of media persecution so far?
Nothing so far. What do you mean worst episodes? They were taken for one day. Four out of 36 have been actually arrested. They will be bailed out quite soon. The others were sent home after 5 to 6 hours of questioning. It's harassment. Okay? And the bigger harassment is not just taking them to the police station at 6:30 in the morning. It is the fact that all their work implements are now going to be frozen for 20 days. 20 days that's the really important thing. And it will go on longer, as one person said to Pakistan, but it can take longer. So they're stuck with that. This is the purpose to, in a sense, cut off your hand, your fingers, so you can't type anymore.
Right.
Let us not underestimate the intelligence of those who are planning terror in India any more than in retrospect we found that we should have underestimated the intelligence of those who planned terror and the Holocaust in Germany. They were extremely intelligent, and they found extraordinarily intelligent ways of mass killing people, like passing them through a sausage machine. So I think that we are moving in that direction. Everyone learns from what they do, and if Mr. Modi is allowed to carry on, by the electorate, of course, in the next election, we will see more of these things, because he does not want to go out of power for whatever reason. Partly it's his ego, and partly which is an enormously powerful driving force. Let's have no illusions about that. Look from where he has come and where he has got to. I mean, I admire that kind of commitment and power of persuasion and ruthlessness in doing things. And if they were done for right things, the man would be great. He would be a Gandhi. Gandhiji was ruthless. People don't know how he ran his ashrams. He was absolutely ruthless. But
Modi has channelized all his energy in the wrong directions, mostly.
I'll give you one small example. If you were in Gandhiji's ashram, you had to clean your own toilet. You were not prepared to do that, you went out. That is ruthlessness. It didn't matter who they were. I think Gandhiji and his sons, he was ruthless with his sons. He practically destroyed his eldest son because the eldest son wanted a small little help from him to get a job. And Gandhiji said, if I do that, I will be finished. That son did all kinds of things. He couldn't take the rejection from his father. He couldn't take the helplessness of his mother. He eventually converted to Islam. He did all kinds of strange things, and he died an early death. That is ruthlessness. If you want to do something, if you believe in something, first be ruthless with yourself, then be ruthless with your followers, to do the right thing. When you turn on your adversaries, then by definition you have something to hide. And by definition, you are afraid, you are in fear. And that is the root of what Mr. Modi is doing. And there's going to be much worse before we come to the elections. Please believe me.
Strong remarks, but yes, quite dispiriting as well as to what could happen to the media world, and especially when you talk about this incident, what has happened to Newsclick. Thank you so much, Mr. Jha. It was wonderful having you on the program. And one appeal to the viewers who are watching this interview: subscribe to our channel, send us your feedback, and stay tuned to the Federal. Thank you.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.